I think I understand fully now why this path of seeking the truth is dangerous. The opposite of love is hate, is envy, it's jealousy. Just like Cain and Abel, right? Where Cain was seen as more favorable, or I think it was Abel. I'm mixing them up, but one brother was seen as more favorable and the other was jealous of the love that the other one was perceived of getting, and he killed him. The same could be said for those who see the truth, because when you see the truth, you have the ability to discern. And when you can discern, you can choose a more favorable path. And for those who don't see the truth, they live in illusions. They're led astray. They're led by the blind, and they're always meeting their own destruction. So they eventually become jealous of those who are more aware. Now think about this, right? When you stand next to somebody who is bigger, who's stronger, who's hulking, muscular, like he just looks like the Hulk, you're not necessarily jealous of his muscles, right? You're like, wow, you could admire the work that that person put in to attain that body, but you wouldn't really want that body, right? Same thing when it comes to appearances of people with long hair, short hair, or they have some cool item on them. You don't feel personal attacks from their decision with what they do, right? Like you don't, like even with somebody that's rich, you might envy their wealth, but you don't feel a personal attack like, how could this guy get rich and offend me off of his richness? You know, like that doesn't happen. But when people come across somebody who is more intellectual than they are, their egos start to flare up. They get offended by the very presence of that person. Within psychology, they call this the mirror effect, where a deep thinker doesn't just introduce new ideas with his deep thoughts. He also reflects the limitations of those around him. I've understood that everyone has different interests in life. Everyone is interested in different things in life. And I'm interested in learning. I'm interested in finding out more things about the mind and so and such. And that's what I talk about. I don't try to force my understanding onto other people. I don't try to tell you that this is the way of life. And this is just what I see from my perspective. But throughout my many interactions of life, I've realized that most people aren't even interested in their own lives, bro. They're interested in the things of the world. They're interested in celebrity gossip, what politics are going on with, what this side, that side going on with. Let's fight about this. And they're not interested in their own lives enough to make these discoveries about themselves. So when a person like me comes along who is interested like that, they feel inadequate because they never thought about it. They never thought about themselves that way. And this is because intelligence is directly correlated with identity. The thoughts you have in your head, the way you think of yourself, the way you think of the world, it is directly matched to your intelligence. See, we can admire all the other traits that humans have with strength. People admire the strength because they see that person as a protector or a defender. Like if you're playing sports or whatever, you would want that person on your team. People admire these other traits, but when it comes to intelligence, they're resistant to that person because their very presence challenges their limitations of their perception. When you challenge people's perception, you're not just challenging their point of view, you're challenging their ego. And people's egos get nasty. Because let me tell you a point in time in history where this had, even with Galileo, the person who said the earth was actually spinning and revolving around the sun, they burned him to the stakes for telling the truth. There was also a doctor who was talking about how, we should wash our hands because, he noticed that there was a higher mortality rate amongst the doctors, and he was being ridiculed for that. Could you believe that? Could you believe that there was a point in time where doctors were against washing their hands? They felt offended by this man's discovery. I forgot his name, but they felt offended by his discovery. Like, he's calling us unclean. He's calling us dirty. Man, get this man out of here. They ridiculed him. They mocked him. They told patients not to go to his practice because he was crazy. He lost his business. All of that because he told the truth. And I think the story goes that he actually, self-deleted. But a year after he self-deleted, that's when they come up with this discovery. Oh yeah, sterilization actually helps with the procedures and not cross-contamination. The status quo has to change for everyone else to get on board. It's like the simulation has to be updated for the followers to get on board with the truth. And I notice this a lot, that whenever I go into deep conversations with certain people, they try to change the subject. They try to change the conversation. They try to, and it's not like I'm trying to bring up politics, it's just like, let's think a little deeper on what does that really mean? What is really real, right? Like, what's real, right? Like, when we get deeper on things like that, people change the subject. They're like, no, let's talk about Teletubbies. Let's talk about Dragon Tales. I used to think like, man, am I boring? Like, is like what I like to talk about boring? Nah, man. I realized that these people, they're going like, that's a self-defense mechanism, right? That's a way of like defending their minds. Instead of being curious of deeper topics or deeper discussion, they have like a dismissiveness, like, it's nothing. No. But that's their way of defending themselves. That's the way of defending their minds, because when they come across somebody who's a deep thinker, they feel challenged. People are always drawn to those who have a projected sense of certainty, a person who has confidence, someone who is sure of themselves. And it doesn't matter if the person is right or wrong. That's the thing. That's the thing about this world, bro. It doesn't matter if the person is right or wrong, just that they have confidence. And you could see this throughout all of history, that there would be people who rise to the position of power or position of great influence that don't challenge the perspective of people. They say the things that the people want to hear. They're like, okay, what do you guys like to hear? I'm gonna say it back to you so you guys vote for me, or so you guys, think I'm your king and your God. There'll be stories just like this about televangelists who go out, they say all of these things. I'm gonna heal you with one touch. I'm gonna pray to God. And they set up a whole act in the audience where they would have an actor who pretends to be sick, and they will call out their name as if they never knew them. Hey, come here to me. God is calling your name. Touch them, pretend that they healed them. Oh, and no one would question it. And if they did question, or, they would have a question about it, they would be too afraid to question it, because they would be too afraid to go against what the majority of people are accepting as true. So they'll just be like, all right, let me just pretend that, that stuff actually did happen. And they'll gaslight themselves into accepting it as reality. I think all of this comes from a tribal mindset, our tribal days when we were in loincloths and ooga booga and having clubs and stuff. Like, I think it comes from those days when we were traveling in tribes and packs. It was deemed a death sentence to not fit into the tribe, because you wouldn't have someone to go and hunt for you. You wouldn't have the support of the tribe. You would have to support yourself. You would have to defend yourself from danger. You would have to go find your own food. You would have to go do your own things. And that would be considered a death sentence, because if you got wounded, you got hurt, you got anything, like, there's no hospitals. It's just, that's it. You got the people around you or you don't. This is why most people's brains are wired for social acceptance rather than intellectual pursuits. Because a person who's a deep thinker, when you come into a social group or social setting, you challenge what is already known to these people. You challenge the cliche that they've come to know about life, or you challenge the status quo. See, one thing I noticed when it comes to socializing, right? I have no problems with socializing with anybody, because I know myself. I'm comfortable with who I am. It's either you like me or you don't. It doesn't matter, bro. But when I interact with certain people, right? When it's a one-to-one, it's like they're comfortable. They're all right. They like to understand more. They're fascinated in learning. But then when it becomes a group setting, it changes. It becomes more like a hive mind now. Like, some type of hive mind effect takes over. And I've made this realization that it's because of the social credit or some type of social status that's at stake when it comes to these people. Like, they care more about their social image than actual learning. Because when someone feels outshined by a deep thinker, they try to exclude them from the group. They try to undermine their intelligence. Because when people are faced with things that challenge their perspective or their views on life, they don't change their minds. They double down on what they already think is true. Like, I remember I had tons of theological debates with my cousin about spirituality and religion, because he's like a religious person. He's into Jesus as his Lord and Savior and stuff. And I read my Bible too. So we had this whole discussion and debate, and we was having a conversation about life and the purpose and meaning and this and that. And every time I would say something, it was like he would feel like he had to push back on it. He had to like, no, you're wrong. I would say something as simple as meditation helps with this, and he would be like, meditation is the devil. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, meditation is like demons and stuff. You just have to pray to Jesus and that's all. I'm like, bro, meditation is a practice to help you with your mind. Like, what are you talking about? How is this like a... He's like, nah, man, that's all demon. You're inviting demons into your... But meditation is in the Bible. Even Jesus talks about meditating. What are you talking about? He's like, nah, man, it's all fake stuff. And I'm giving him quotes straight out of the Bible. I'm like, because I really read the Bible. Like, I read this not for others. I read this for myself, to understand it myself. So, you know, this is not a game to me. And he's like, nah, man, nah, bro, you don't know, man. You're talking on the fake stuff, the new age stuff. I understand where you're coming from. I was there once. These are the quotes in the Bible where it talks about understanding your mind. What is hidden will come to manifest. That when Jesus talks about these things, he's talking about the thoughts in your mind. But he's like, nah, man. And when I ask him, okay, where's your evidence? Where's your, you know, quotes? You know, because it's not that I'm trying to have this like match for match, but it's like, where are you getting this conviction of your understanding of life? Because I'm trying to understand with you, man. I'm not even trying to combat you. I'm just trying to like understand with you. And he's like, check this out. And he pulls up a Facebook quote, like somebody wrote on Facebook about some portals open up in 2021 or something like that. I don't know. The rivers in the Ephesians rivers dried up. So now this is going to be the mark of the end of the world. And I'm just like, okay, this guy is deep on some conspiracy theory type of blog page, and he's reading too much on other people's thoughts and not really developing his own thoughts. But one thing I found interesting with his reaction throughout our conversations was his combativeness to further research. Like, every time I would say something that involved like something that I've been knew. For example, the meditation thing. There was a Buddhist monk that went to a MIT tech place where they did a CAT scan on his brain while he was meditating, and they showed the brain waves of before and after, how meditation affects the brain. And before I could even say anything about that, he's saying, how do we know that those machines are actually telling the truth? Huh? And I'm like, bro, the machines are used in medicine, bro. Like, and he's like, no, how do you know that? Everything that just went into more detail, he's like, nah, stop right there. There's a conspiracy there. They're making it up. It was his coping mechanism to protect his mind, that he didn't want to shatter his reality. He didn't want to shatter what he's come to know as true. And that's his identity. So he was protecting his identity in that moment. Why is it that intelligence, the very thing that drives society, right? The thing that has us communicating right now, the technology that built this stuff is used with intelligence. Why is intelligence rejected? It's because comfort is what people seek. Arthur Schopenhauer was a philosopher who talked about the human will and how most people have the will to live, that they seek pleasure, they seek comfort, and they're just trying to survive. But he says that highly intelligent people, they have a different will, a will to truth. Instead of living their lives for comfort or pleasure, they live their lives seeking the truth, and they will sacrifice comfort and pleasure for that very truth. He says how most people chase fame, they chase power, they chase relationships, but the deep thinker question the purpose of these pursuits. And the way how it comes off to other people is like, you don't care about the things that excites them. So in a way, they look at you as a threat to their happiness. You know, like they look at you as like, oh, this guy, he's gonna kill he's a killjoy. He kills the joy of happiness that I have, the little excitement I have in my life. He's gonna kill it. So I gotta stay away from that guy. And this is why I say people can only understand you as much as they understand themselves. Schopenhauer also said that intelligence is a gift and a curse, because you have the gift to see what others cannot. You have the ability to think deeper on things and perceive on things that most aren't willing to go. It's a gift in a sense that you aren't easily misled, but it's also a curse, because a lot of people who conform to the status quo, they are against the intelligent, and this repels the intelligent person from socializing, because the group dynamic requires a level of dumbing down. Like, you shouldn't know too much. You're too aware. Basically, what happens in the Ooga Booga days is what happens to the intelligent people. They get shunned, right? They get shunned from the tribes. They get shunned from the group because you think like us. You know what I'm saying? So Arthur Schopenhauer, he said how that's why most intellectual people, they have depression. As human beings are social creatures. We are social animals. The more you're aware of your reality, the less you can ignore, the less things you can put off, because you know too much now. You know the Pandora's box is open, and you can't fall back to the illusion that everyone else is participating in. And that feels depressing. But Schopenhauer says that there is strength in being alone. You can develop your skills better, faster, and more efficiently when you're by yourself. Instead of trying to fit into the secular society or mainstream society, find like-minded people. Find people who actually have a connection. It's a way different experience than people who talk about the same things that everyone else in mainstream is talking about, because it's almost like they're all bots, bro. They all just say the same things. Because when you converse with somebody that thinks deeper, you might get a perspective that you've never thought about before. But most people are against change. So why are people so against change, even when it leads to their own progression in life, their own progress? Psychologists call this cognitive ease. That's when the brain prefers simple and familiar information that it's used to, because it requires less mental process, less mental energy to process the information. And this makes the people who have this feel as if anything that is different from what they already know is dangerous. It's dangerous because it's uncharted territory. It's unfamiliar territory. And they rather conform to what the group is thinking, because they don't want to fear like social rejection. It's the same thing with the Ooga Booga, right? Like, they want to be a part of the tribe. And that tribalism thinking creates echo chambers where people just regurgitate the same thoughts over and over without challenging those thoughts. When someone comes along that challenges those thoughts, they get offended that someone would dare question the status quo. How would anything change if no one sees the change? And the funny thing is that most people who come into this life and exhibit a form of intelligence, they're ridiculed in their lifetimes. All the people who've made a real impact on this world and made a real change in society during their lifetime, they were not treated as well. After they die and after the change is made, that's when they're celebrated. That's when everyone is like, oh yeah, he was right. Oh yeah, that person was right. Oh yeah. Just like the Hungarian doctor who was like, wash your hands. At the time, they were like, nah, man, you're crazy. Now they have it all over the hospitals. This reminds me of a quote that goes, knowledge is regarded by the fool as ignorance. The things that are profitable to him, he deems as hurtful and harmful. Therefore, death is his food. Anyways, I just wanted to share this piece of insight with you as to why intelligent people are rejected in society. It's because people don't like change until everybody else likes it. That's when they'll like to change.